How do you want people to judge or perceive you? The way your present actions and words are based on the actions you have done and things they've heard about you. I am Raima M. Kusain, and in this video and in this lesson, I am going to discuss American New Criticism or the New Criticism. For the overview of this lesson discusses the American New Criticism. The process of analyzing literary pieces is explicated, as well the proponents of this literary approach and its development is tackled in this section. As we go along with this lesson, let us be reminded and be guided with our learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, students are expected to A. Define American New Criticism, B. Discuss the process of American New Criticism in interpreting literary pieces, and C. Analyze a poem using the American New Criticism as literary theory. But before we delve to the main topic, which is the New Criticism, let us explore the life of John Crowe Ransom, as he is the founder of this theory. John Crowe Ransom was born in Pulaski, Tennessee on April 13, 1888 and died on July 3, 1947 in Gambier, Ohio. He was an American poet, critic, and agrarian champion. In 1920, he married Rose Breville, and the couple had 3 children. He received his Bachelor of Arts degree from Vanderbilt University in 1909, and from 1914 to 1937, he was a member of DePaul University. John Crowe Ransom is the founder of New Criticism and the center of Fugitives. Fugitives is a group of poets, and they opposed both the traditional sentimentality of Southern writing and the increased pace of the life that emerged during the war years and the early 1920s. Okay. Among his works or poems are the Poems About God in 1919, Chills and Fever in 1924, Grace After Meat in 1924, Two Gentlemen in Bounds 1927, and Selected Poems in 1945 and in 1963. Among the best-known poems of Ransom are Bells for John Whiteside's Daughter, Captain Carpenter, and The Equilibrist. He won the Bollingen Prize in 1951 and the National Book Award for his poetry in 1964. During his years in Kenyon, he became Carnegie Professor of Poetry at Kenyon College and there founded the Kenyon Review. He also founded the unit at Kenyon that became the Summer School of Letters at Indiana University. In Kenyon, from the 1920s, Ransom had mixed in the healthy discussions of criticism going on in the magazines, solidifying his position in God Without Thunder in 1930, The World's Bad in 1938, and The New Criticism 1941. And then, he is given credit for applying the term New Criticism to the dedicated search for the intrinsic in poetry. Ransom's best-known essay on this subject is The Criticism as Pure Speculation. And now, what is American New Criticism? New criticism theory is a theory involves analyzing a work of literature by only using what is present in the text, without looking at the author, the historical and cultural background, or even the reader of the text. Meaning, using this theory to criticize a literary work, an individual does not have to relate the work to the life of the author in order to understand the piece, but rather, the meaning of the piece can be determined or identified by just simply looking and analyzing the parts of the literary piece. This theory was first introduced in the early 20th century in America by John Crowe Ransom. The theory believes that literature is an organic unity, meaning all the parts or elements within a literary piece are working together to generate meaning of the entire piece. It also focuses on the importance of close reading a piece of literature, mainly poetry, to understand how it functions as a self-contained object. So, this is a process of criticism wherein the individual must take a look at the elements or parts of the piece, such as the literary devices used in the entire piece, in order to understand the meaning of the work. The self-contained statement here means that the piece or factors such as the historical background of the author has nothing to do with the meaning of the entire piece. Essentially, with close reading, the reader will pay close attention to what is said and how it is written, the form or the meaning and form. Again, it is not concerned with context, historical, biographical, and intellectual, and so on. But it is concerned to trace how the parts of the text relate, how it achieves its order and harmony. And the New Critics looks into resolving irony, paradox, tension, and ambivalence and ambiguity of a literary text in order to identify or come up with the meaning of the literary text or piece. Moving on, we have the strengths and weaknesses of New Criticism. Let us start with its strengths. First, no need to bring in the outside context. So you don't have or you don't need to include outside factors just to understand its meaning. Second, it calls for a careful and thought reading of the text. Since close reading is important, you can do careful reading just to get the meaning. And third, you can be performed without much research. And fourth, text is seen in isolation, meaning you can understand the meaning of a piece without further or need to undergo research about the background of the piece or the author. And we have the weaknesses. First, the first weakness of New Criticism, it ignores the context of the work. So the tendency is that you might neglect or forget an important information about the piece. And the second weakness, it ignores the relationship of one story to another. That means it cannot be account for allusion. So you might not understand the connection of the piece from the other piece without acknowledging the background of the author or the biographies of the author. Those are the strengths and weaknesses of New Criticism. Now let us understand the role of the author in New Criticism. The intentional fallacy. The intentional fallacy states that it does not matter what the author intended. He or she is not the final authority on the text. The text itself is. Reader can interpret the text without concern for whether that interpretation was intended. We often believe that some works or literary pieces are related to the author's experience and that the meaning is anchored from that experiences. However, the New Criticism believes that the author is not the one to determine the meaning of the piece based on his or her intention, because the text itself will represent a meaning. That is why close reading is important in New Criticism, because the reader must draw his or her own interpretation of the text or the piece. So what are the elements or factors we need to consider in doing this criticism? First, we have to use or consider the symbols. Symbols, all texts have symbols, ideas that are not literal. Some paradox arises from the multiple meanings of a symbol. So this is the use of ideas, may it be names or objects that correspond to a not literal meaning. Second, we have the paradox. Any texts that have inherent contradiction. So this is the element that suggests comparison or contradiction within a piece that obviously presents meaning. Third, ambiguity. These are contradictions and symbols lead to areas of ambiguity, something that does not have a single clear meaning. So this can be observed in the text when there is an idea that seems to not have a clear meaning because it suggests other meanings. Fourth, tension. Ambiguity leads to tension within the context, competing ideas and meanings that need interpretation. The tension means when there is an ambiguity within a piece that may lead to a tension, especially when there are opposing ideas. Fifth, we have the irony. Irony is the language that normally signifies the opposite. An example given, a fire station burns down. So one way to resolve some of the tension is through an ironic interpretation of at least part of the text. So irony is usually used to make an interesting piece, and at the same time it is used to resolve the tension. Sixth, we have the pattern. Look for repeated patterns. Are there certain types of ambiguities present through the whole text? Certain types of tension? These are patterns that lead to theme. So pattern, when doing a close reading, we can recognize the pattern. The pattern includes the structure and other elements of the piece or literary piece. And the last one, we have to consider the unity. So the patterns will lead us to unity, a final unified meaning or theme for the text as a whole. This is the goal of new criticism. Unified meaning is the final output of the text. It is finally, after identifying the previous parts or elements, the unified meaning can be drawn or concluded. Okay, since we have done discussing what is new criticism and the elements we need to consider in doing or applying the new criticism, let us have an example. So, how to do literary analysis using American New Criticism or the New Criticism. So, kindly read the text and identify or determine the elements used in this piece or poem based on what we have discussed a while ago. Okay, upon identifying the elements or parts of this piece, here is our output. Okay, for the symbol, there is symbols that have drawn in this or from that piece. We have the C, which has two competing meanings or symbols. The C symbolizes vast, open, and uncontrolled. Also symbolizes tight, controlled, and predictable. The next elements we have determined the paradox. The paradox in that piece is the C is both something uncontrolled and overwhelming, wild, and something with predictable pattern. And what is the ambiguity from the text? Affairs of men are compared to the sea. So are the affairs of men controllable and predictable, or are these wild and boundless? We have also identified the tension. So the tension from the piece is between men who are at the mercy of the sea and nature itself. Another element we have identified is the part of the irony. So the irony from the text is that men are leading voyages to find their fortunes and their venture are at stake. They have the illusion of control, but in reality, they are afloat. The men are the ones who have lost control. We have also identified the pattern. The constant juxtaposition of a man in the sea, men seeking, the tides working against them. And the unified meaning, we have identified that men act under the illusion of control when in reality they have none. The tides of the fate truly have power, and men must find a way to work within those confines. So those are the elements or parts of the text that we have identified using the new criticism. So that would be all. Thanks for watching. Once again, I am Raima M. Said.